Hello folks, Reverend Crystal Cox here, and I want to tell you a little bit about me, a little bit of resume stuff. I get it Googled on my sites a lot. I get emails asking me about my background. And due to my, what I call now a civil rights and a human rights case, because I believe that your right to expose corruption and to tell the news, having equal rights in the courts as any journalist, even in the richest of newspapers, is a human right and a civil right, because we are being violated in corrupt courts by corrupt attorneys, corrupt judges, corrupt cops, corrupt commissioners, corrupt governors in every state across the land. And us having a right to report the news and being equal is a human rights issue. So people often, because of my case, tend to Google my resume. They're like, they want to know more about me and my background and why I write the way I do. Get a lot of questions of why I capitalize in odd places. Have you ever read Thomas Paine's Common Sense? He does that. A lot of the times I just want to give the answer, do you read a lot? Because a lot of books do that. But at any rate, this is just a little resume of kind of what I've done with my work history in my life, in my schooling and my book learning, and chewing grass and wearing a cowboy hat and being a bit of a redneck hillbilly. Because, I'm all of the above. Alright, well, I grew up country girl on the sands of... No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, I grew up in Rexford, Montana, and I grew up in a one-room schoolroom. Even though I'm not, that old. I'm 43 right now. And I graduated high school in 1989, and after high school I kind of wanted to go into forestry, but then I thought, well, that was a little bit nerdy, so I decided to go to engineering school. So I went to 2-year engineering school, and then I decided that I really did want to be a forester. So then I went to forestry school, and I got a degree in forestry, and I was set to go on and get a master's in hydrology, but then I started my own forestry business. I was always one to, I'd read a contract. I worked for a forest contractor. I read his contracts one summer, and then the next years after that I just bid on them and got my own. So I had my own forestry company, and I bid on surveys where I did things like, test the disease of different plants and trees, the diameters, the heights, timber stands, the kinds of plants in the forest. And in college they taught us like 30 indicator plants, which would mean what would a forest be in 100 years, and I won't go into all that details of the forest tech stuff, but I learned hundreds and hundreds of plants, and I wrote a book on Northwest Montana edible and medicinal plants, and was really into alternative medicine and healing from that point. I found that there wasn't a lot of money in forestry, and the politics drove me nuts. When I worked for the actual Forest Service and I had to carry my radio and had to check in all the time and just make me roll my eyes all the time, there's just so many rules, and it's like, government work, and I was bored out of my mind pretty much. I'm sure there's satisfying jobs in the Forest Service, but I wasn't in one of them. And when I would do contract work, I could do hundreds of surveys in a day, say this one particular survey. But when I did it for the Forest Service, we would only do 30 or 40 because we, wanted to pace it out. When you do it by contract, you want to get it done and go home. So I'm not one to lollygag. I'm very motivated and driven, and so I just didn't want to work for the Forest Service. I started my own forestry business. And then probably in the mid-90s, my partner and I opened a bakery, and so we had an organic bakery, and we wholesale bread, and we baked all kinds of it was kind of ahead of its time a little bit. We had organic juice bar. Everything we did was organic, and people didn't necessarily want to pay the organic prices. And then we, wholesale bread and stuff like that. And then in the middle of all of that, I got a real estate license. And I worked for someone else for about a year. And then I opened my own real estate company, which I've had for the last 14 years. And I've been licensed in many states, and I've mostly done that. About 7 years ago, I started selling, with Good Life International, selling arginine because I had severe artery plaque. I had smoker's arteries from secondhand smoke. I've never smoked a day in my life, but my stepfather smoked, And I was also around a lot of smoke at poker tables because I used to play live poker a lot in my mid-20s to mid-30s. And at that time, you smoked at the tables. And so I took arginine, and it really helped with my angina. And I took it for quite a few years, and I got like quite a few distributors. And so then I just started making a living selling arginine. And then we would buy and sell real estate, and we developed some property, built houses, developed the ground, developed the houses, done subdivisions, pretty much everything to do with real estate. And then I started doing speaking out against the Association of Realtors, and I had a whole bunch of blogs, so I started using my blogs to give voice to victims of corruption in my hometown. There was a whole bunch of rapes that were not investigated, and I made a stand, and then from there we did a sheriff's recall, which ended up bringing down 30 years worth of corruption, and it kind of exploded. That at the same time with exposing a local golf course that was doing some corrupt stuff and running over landowner rights. And then from that, the Summit 1031 bankruptcy information came to me because I had taken a lot of classes from the Summit folks, because being a real estate broker, a part of our continuing education was 1031s. And so I did a write-up about them, and insiders emailed me on the Summit bankruptcy. And from there, you guys can watch other videos on that story, but I started getting tips all over the world. And so for about 5 years then after that, I mostly just worked on exposing corruption. I felt spiritually drawn to that mission, and I made a living. I lost everything, my real estate company, anything that we'd built, houses, lost everything because of corruption. But I felt very, very passionate about it, and so I kept fighting, and I kept, eventually got sued, and those of you who know about my case know kind of how that all went. But during those years, I made a living from selling arginine. I wasn't really doing real estate. It was an MLM, so I was getting money every month from that. And then all of a sudden, let's see, this is 2014 in April. And actually, it's almost a year ago now, the MLM money kind of just stopped. And just out of nowhere. Because the business kind of had a glitch, and a long story there. So at this current moment, I don't make a living selling arginine. I'm mostly, right now, I'm moving in towards starting my own church, and I've studied the last 25 years spiritual information. I've studied alternative medicine for the last 20 years, very passionate about that. I've written a lot about it, studied a lot, helped a lot of people, kind of like as a wellness coach. Never really made money at it, and I've done lots of healings, energy healing, hands-on healings, long-distance healing, but I never really tried to make a living at that either. And spiritual counseling, but I never charged for that. But since I was 16, which was the harmonic convergence, spiritually, I have been very much into New Age and metaphysical and studying spirituality across the board. And since then I've studied, because I grew up studying the Bible and Jehovah's Witness stuff, and so I've studied Buddhism, I've studied, Wiccan and pagan and New Age stuff, like I've studied Cryon and the Pleiadian information and esoteric material and, deep Christian and just all kinds of theology, and just a whole life of spiritual connection. And when I was a child, deep prayer and spiritual connection, and everything that I've done with my life has been spiritually driven. And yeah, I'm human, so I have had challenges to be a better me. But basically, as far as my work resume is, I have a degree in forestry. I had a forestry business, then a bakery, and commercial development, real estate. I've owned my own real estate company, and internet marketing, and that's kind of basically it. Folks think that kind of wonder, where I'm at, like techie, because I'm pretty good at what I do on the internet. I have like 1,500 blogs, but I've never took any classes on any of that. I don't know how to write code, or I never built blogs on HTML or anything like that. I always did free blogs with Blogger, and so I didn't really have to do that. So it was just basically, type and publish, even though they said I wasn't a publisher. And but a lot of people assume that I went to tech school or some sort of computer school because of what I do online. But no, I guess by schooling, by my learning, I guess I'm a forester by trade. But I'm a spiritual counselor and, as kind of a passion. Anyway, that's just a little bit about me for those of you who ask and want to know, and God bless you all.